We're live. So make sure you stay muted. Randy. myself. There we go. Okay. So I have 6 o'clock. So let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, so all of our board members are here, so we have a quorum. So let's go into the minutes, starting with April 20th. Does anybody have any changes or additions to the April 20th minutes? Okay, we have a motion to approve. Okay, and we're getting some feedback. Is that just me? Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, do we have somebody motioned?
Motion by Steve.
Okay, and a second by Randy. Okay. All in favor of approving the April 20th minutes, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, thank you. Some long names. Thank you. Okay, next set is April 27th. So any changes, corrections to April 27th? Clark?
On page 20, in section 7, the third line, the word losses. I thought we had talked about that in the email, but maybe not. Should be costs or expenses. We don't have to show losses.
Okay, good catch.
Page number 3, but it's 20 overall. Page 3, third line. I would call it expense.
Okay, just expenses, not cost or expenses. Expenses.
Well, we can use either word. I would use the word expense.
Expenses. Okay. Okay. Any other changes to that one? Okay, thank you, Clark, for catching that. So all in favor, or we need a motion, I guess. With that one change, do we have a motion? Clark moves. We have a second, Steve. Okay. Any other comments? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes. Minutes of April 27th are approved. On to April 30th. Any changes, corrections, or additions to the minutes from April 30th? Okay, we have a motion to approve. Okay, Sam. Second by Jerry. Okay, all in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes. Minutes of April 30th are approved. Takes us to May 4th, and we've had a lot of meetings. Any changes, corrections, or additions to the minutes for May 4th? We have a motion to approve. Clark, do we have a second? Steve, all in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed? Motion passes. Okay, minutes from May 4th are approved. Takes us to May 11th. So do we have any comments, changes, or corrections to May 11th, minutes of May 11th? Okay, do we have a motion to approve? Sam? Second. Jerry? All in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed? Those minutes are approved. Okay, I think that's all of those. Next on the agenda is Clark's financial update or treasurer's report.
Thank you. As if all of you ever look at page 33, the presentation. Yeah, please. The next slide, please. Presentation will have a summary of those. There's a comma missing right there on April actual on the revenue side. Actual April revenue was 289 versus a budget of 405 for a $16,000 approximate not really a loss, but under budget. On the expense side, April actual was 411 with a budget of 420, which was kind of better than budget, about 9,200. So April actual was down 22,300 in revenue versus our April budget, which projected to be down 15. So actual to budget was about $6,800. Year to date, we're 113,000 to the good year to date. Next slide, please. Next slide is your major revenue contributors. Food and beverage was off the monthly budget by 31,000. Green fees was off the budget by 3,000. Building permits is not on this list. However, if you'll look at the detail, you'll see building permits was off $3,100. We had some miscellaneous income of $15,743. That was our dividend. We do our workers' comp through a mutual company, Texas Mutual. That expense on our workers' comp runs about $40,000 a year, and it's a mutual, so we got a dividend of $15,700 against that. Newsletter ads were about 3,600 better than budget. Good work again on that. Next, please, would be the expense highlights. Lake and Parks was about 4,900 better than budget, and that's just timing because of weather. Golf course was 22,000 worse than budget, and that was water and tree removal substantially. There were some accessories, some golf course accessories done. We had to buy some sand. It was over budget as well. There were some small equipment purchased, blowers and weed eaters. We kind of, if you'll notice on the first tee box and next to the putting green over here, we had to redo some of that. You'll see a line item called botanicals. That's what that was all about. And then that whole rework of those flower beds there, they expensed a little overtime to get there. And so that's the total of that 22,171. Administration was 2,500 better than budget due to salary. We lost Jessica, that's who it is. Lodge management was about 5,400. Most of that was salaries on the timing. And if you'll notice year to date, that is on the fiscal year. I like to look at, as we get later on in the year, right now, I like to look at the year to date numbers, not just the monthly numbers. And you'll see we're under budget year to date. Lodge food and beverage is about 18,000 under budget intentionally, because if you'll notice the revenue side was 31,000. And so we didn't buy as much. It's reduced salaries, food supplies, and liquor. We didn't buy as much as budgeted. Another item that's not on this list that probably ought to be is security. They were $3,900 better than budget. That's a person and a reduction in a salary there as well. So they're doing a little bit better on a monthly basis. Next page. Next page are our reserve funds. ARF balance is up about 20,000 to 1,381,000. The CARF balance is up 20,000 to 787,135. And the capital development balance is down to 21,600. That was a 179. That's the pavilion. Delinquent accounts, surprisingly, a decrease over March of about $736. 31 accounts at 30 days for 10,000, 5 accounts at 60 days for 2,000, 8 accounts at 90 days for 12,500. Indian Creek volunteered fire department on opt-in with 6 new members for a total of 158 at present. Next. Checking account at First State has 478,250 in it. All of our reserve funds, which contains our contingency and security deposits, that totals 2,470,000. The total of all accounts is 2,950,000. Is there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Clark. Okay, so that takes us to the Indian Creek Fire Department update. Do you have a presentation or anything? You're just,
I guess I could stay down there too.
yeah.
Come down here. I'm Denny Ingalls, lot 699, president of your Indian Creek Volunteer Fire Department. I know almost everybody in the I'll be followed by Barbara Fox, who's our vice president. And we just want to give you an update since our last briefing and the last PowerPoint. The PowerPoint is also on our website, and it's also, we've also put information out regularly in the communique, a number of articles. As noted in all of those places and on our website, we owe our firefighters so much for all that they do and for always being ready. Have you ever been there when there's a call, somebody needs help? It's pretty amazing. They keep us safe, and they also give us better insurance rates, which is nice. Our rating, our insurance industry rating is quite good. It's about as good as it ever gets with a volunteer fire department. As we also noted last time, your fire department faces some really substantial issues about sustainability. So we have an outstanding record. How do we sustain it? And as we mentioned, we just probably can't continue to sustain the service record, especially because we depend so much on 4 volunteers out of the 19 that we have. 4 of them make 80% of our calls, and you can't sustain that. Every one of these firefighters works somewhere else full time. They have family responsibilities, that sort of thing. And so really we need to look for other ways to ease the demands, especially on those 4, but in general. As noted last time in our last presentation as well, we have our donations and our 2 fundraisers account for 93% of our income. So we get the other 7% from the county. And our income is too variable, and it's insufficient to sustain all it is that we need to do, especially as we've started looking forward. In the next 2 years, we need to buy a $600,000 fire engine and 3 other expensive emergency vehicles. And our fire station needs substantial upgrades. But again, our current income is not sufficient. Thus, we need a different way forward. As mentioned the last time, across Texas and throughout the United States, volunteer fire departments facing issues like these are having to resort to some other means. And in most cases, it is something called an Emergency Services District, ESD. It's a county entity that very fairly garners support from every property owner in the district. Barbara will now share more information about what we're doing with regard to our efforts to become an emergency services district.
What we've done so far, and is we formed an ESD committee, and with some people, and Denny is the chair of that also, to try to create and research to find out how we can obtain this financial.
We can't hear anything.
Inside of that tower, more towards the Bellevue and North Shore area. A couple of miles here, a couple of miles there. Mr. Fletcher, Ray, we then met with him and said, would he approve these boundaries? Because he's kind of the bottom line guy. And he kind of gave us his blessing on that. And so the next thing is that we are completing a PowerPoint to present to Commissioner's Court and to Judge Brinkley to say, hey, we want to pursue this. We have your blessing and get their approval to go ahead and proceed to try to have an election in May of 2021. And that's where we are. And if you noticed in the communique last month, I started trying to educate the Kiowa people on what an ESD is. Read it, I don't know. I've been doing some bullets, questions and answers, simple answers. And then this month, you'll see they go in a little bit more in depth. So, what happens when you present to Judge Brinkley and the Commissioner's Court? And that's what's going on. We'll keep you updated.
Any questions at all, please?
Yes.
Yes.
And just don't have it on.
It would be part of a standard countywide election.
Yeah.
And then the taxing. So the taxing entity would actually officially start on like January 22. Okay.
Do y'all have a pro forma of what that may look like starting in 22? Revenue versus
We
expense?
have one on the district, the 62 square miles we have now, that when we do the new boundaries, we're waiting for our Doug Smith, the appraiser, to give us those figures. Actually, what would our income be?
Great.
But it's where everybody, even inside and outside, you know, we only have a third of those Kiowa people, you know, donating money. We have less than that outside. So this is the way everybody should do their fair share.
Yeah.
Instead of us depending on those large amounts of people donate.
Okay.
He's unmuting.
Do you guys want to share what you think that the rate will be, or have you not determined that yet? Or?
We're looking at what they call a dime essentially 0.01%. But for the taxation, it would be about $100 for every $100,000 worth of value in the house. Out here, the average house is about $300,000 average. So you'd be looking at $300 a year. But every property owner in the district would pay based on his or her property value.
And we would, as a committee and going towards the Judge Brinkley, will ask for the dime. But it can be anywhere from 0 to a dime. And for an election. Then as the ESD board, which are appointed commissioners, they can always decrease it for a certain year if they want to. But if we start out asking for only a nickel, we have to have a whole new election to ask for a dime. So as a board, you can always decrease, but you have to have an election to increase. Makes sense?
And would that be part of, it wouldn't be its own taxing entity, it'd be part of the county tax?
That's correct. The county would collect the taxes and then they
And
would
distribute.
appoint a board, an ESD board that would distribute those taxes to the fire department.
It's its own taxing entity.
So it'll be listed on the tax bill,
Yes.
Yeah.
but county collected.
Correct.
County collects it. Uh-huh. For that phrase.
Okay, within Cook County, are there other ESDs currently?
We will be the first.
None.
That's the reason they're, let's take our time and do it correctly and get the boundaries right, so that if in the future, some of the other ones decide to be in ESD2, or if they decide, we want to join y'all and we annex them in, it has to be approved by our ESD and their volunteer. Both sides have to say yes before annexation happens.
Well, there's that. We don't know, there may be actual legal costs involved in this. It's a highly legalistic process, as you can imagine. Even just the petition to request the election has to be legally sanctioned and everything. And there are attorneys across the U.S. and a couple in Texas who specialize in this kind of law. So we're working to see if we can't get pro bono help. But in the event we don't, in the event we incur some costs, we're not allowed to spend fire department funds. So we may come back here and ask for a buy-in from our folks. Barbara said we're at 30-some%. It's closer to 20%, I think, when you crunch the numbers of people in Kiowa who donate to the fire department. So I think it's time probably for all of us to be thinking about, better ways to help. But we may come back and have an ask if it turns out we need some. We'll see.
And we're researching it. I mean, Denton County,
Hold on one second. The viewers are having a hard time hearing you all. So I put you on this computer, and if you would speak up towards this one and raise your voice a little bit.
Denton County has an ESD, and they have like 5 volunteer fire departments that feed into that one ESD. You go to Nacogdoches County, they have 4, I think, but they're all each separate ESDs. So there's a ton of models out there. So we're researching to figure out, what do we want? What do we think is best for this area? So, okay.
Anything else? Charlie? Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all. Appreciate y'all coming tonight. All right. I guess that takes us to our COVID-19 committee. You just got one knocked off? Good timing. Looks like it's working. Okay.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
Okay. The meeting I went to on May 14th, I attended on a conference call, was fairly brief. The meetings that we attend weekly are getting shorter and shorter, which is a good thing, I think. The main points of that meeting, they talked about a strike force, which will be formed by EMS from Gainesville, and they'll be going into the nursing homes and doing the tests. So that sounded like the smart way to do it. One of the representatives from the city of Gainesville mentioned that the restaurants and retail had opened up, not 100%. I think they're mostly at 25 and 50, but they're not doing very well with dine-in. Takeout is still good. So he mentioned maybe we should all get out and spend some money and visit our retailers and our restaurants. There was several of the cities who had opened their playgrounds. City of Lindsay, Munster, Gainesville, but Gainesville has not put the basketball hoops back in because you can't have groups larger than 4 in an athletic activity. But I was surprised to hear about the playgrounds. A number of the school districts have set their graduation dates. It will be mostly family. It will be outdoors. May 22nd for several of them, July 10th for Lindsay. Valley View is going to be May 31st. So it's kind of all over the board, but they're all doing something for their graduating seniors. Any questions or? Dr. Lewis was there. He didn't talk a lot. On that day, we had 12 cases and there were 2 to 4 active. But because the delays in the status and the testing, he wasn't sure how many still active cases at that time. And as of this week, we're up to 13 cases.
10 appeals, correctly?
Mhm.
Yeah, we really have 3 cases in the county.
Kathy, did you get the governor's proclamation today? Any big takeaways from that?
Just, the gyms and everything else opening up that had not, the bars. So I didn't have a chance to listen to all of it. I just got pieces and parts. And this meeting that I do weekly is now going to go every other week. So I'll have updates for you every other week instead of weekly.
Okay. Anybody else? Questions? Okay, Jim, you got something?
I was going to make a motion related to our rule or guidelines again. Should I do it now? Okay. If anybody can turn theirs off, that'd be great. Thank you. With the governor opening Texas more today, I would like for Lake Kiowa to open up more also, and that would include for visitors to the golf course and to the lodge and to the beaches that we have previously denied visitors to. And the reasons for this are that everybody that I talk to personally, and I'm sure other opinions out there, but everybody that has voiced their opinion to me believes that it should be they should be allowed to make their decisions and who they bring in, and that they're responsible for themselves and those types of things. On the golf course, again, the golf course, the only reason we would really be doing it is because we're trying to protect tee times for members, but I'm getting a lot of people saying they want visitors to play. And then we talk about the lodge, or if we go to the lodge, we just talked about Gainesville saying they want people to come visit restaurants. Well, these people in this community are going to those restaurants and restaurants beyond, visiting those same places, coming back here and have the right to visit this. So if we're worried about the transmission, those things can happen, and people are again, like I said the other day, people continue to go and come from this community. So allowing the visitors that do come in, I don't see why that's the problem. So I'd like a motion to us to rescind those limitations.
Anything on other, like our playground, is that the only other thing we've really got a limit on? Anything regarding playgrounds? Kathy mentioned playgrounds had opened in Gainesville.
I'm okay with stopping that because you have to touch it, and then it's hard for children to understand how to respond.
Okay for leaving it like it is right now?
Yeah.
Okay. Comments to Jim's motion?
Aye.
Yeah, I concur with Jim. State's opening up, and I got 3 phone calls today in the last 2.5 hours. And people saying this is dumb. How come I can go to Gainesville, but I can't bring my brother in here? And I just don't know what to tell them, except that as a board, trying to protect your safety, and every one of them said, well, I won't say what they said, but said they're grown men. And there's my side.
Randy, what about the tee times? If we opened up to visitors, should we go back to
Well,
7 minutes or 8 minutes or 9 minutes?
We talked about the tee times in the golf committee, and you'd be amazed at the overall consensus. Everybody was happy with the 10-minute tee times because it sped up play. They did a little survey, and it was saving 20 or 30 minutes for a fivesome. And they said getting out and playing faster. So they were. I was the only one that wanted to go back to the 7 and 8 and try to get in more tee times. And the whole committee, it was. I mean, they were overwhelmingly said the 10-minute tee times with the starters in particular was the way that they would really like to continue for the time being.
I realize I skipped a step, and I should have asked for a second before we started discussing that. So does someone want to second Jim's? Okay, Randy seconded. Okay, maybe he did before and I missed it. So, okay, I'm sorry. I know he said he agreed with it. Okay, other comments, Kathy?
Just as Gainesville was asking everybody to participate in the retail and the restaurants in Gainesville, they were also realizing people aren't going. They're comfortable with takeout. They aren't comfortable with sitting and dining. I think it's still too early. I'd like us to continue this at least through the holiday and then relook at it maybe the next meeting.
Just the lodge, or are you talking about golf?
Golf, beaches, okay. Everything we did last week.
Okay. Jerry, do you have a comment?
Yes, sir.
Yes, the tee times are going from 7:30 to 5 o'clock now. Well, I can't go because I don't know how many threesomes and foursomes there are. If there's a threesome, you bring in 2 guests, it doesn't change anything. Got a foursome, it changes 1, doesn't? I mean, so I can't. I don't have the numbers for that. Sorry.
That answered it.
Any more comments, questions before we vote? Jim?
I understand what Kathy is saying, and I think, and that the point that people are not going to those restaurants and the people that they're not really coming to the lodge that much just shows that it's people's decision and it's their personal responsibility and their personal decision to make. And I don't think that's where I don't think we should get involved with that.
Anybody else? Okay, so we have a motion to allow visitors on the golf course, the lodge, and the beaches. Leave the tee times at 10 minutes. Keep the Playground's closed for now. We have a second from that. All in favor, say aye. All opposed to that, raise a hand. 1, 2, 3. Okay, Jerry's in favor as well. So I see a vote of 6-3 in favor of Jim's motion. So that motion passes. So thank you. Okay, so that takes us to,
Just a follow-up question.
yes.
So now that we've opened stuff up, the guidelines that we last looked at, how does that change? I mean, what, are we still issuing any kind of statement, or are we just rescinding everything and saying, I mean, does anybody have any thought? What are we telling everybody now?
Right. Well, so we tried to do a consolidated message, and that just wasn't working at all. Let's see, I guess I'm unmuted. And so what we wound up doing was just issuing a statement that we've opened up whatever we opened up before. We opened up the lake and a few of the other amenities, right? That's what I see us doing tomorrow morning, just to announce that the golf course is now allowing visitors, the lodge is allowing visitors, and the beaches are allowing visitors. So short and sweet. Let's not go back to that. Let's try to get a giant consolidated message.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to suggest it, but is there still any kind of suggestions, I guess, to limit, or are we just taking all that and saying that's done? It doesn't, I'm just asking, because we had stuff on the website, and I'm trying to understand then what we just did here, how does that affect the message?
Yeah, maybe if we could just get something that's, hey, we still encourage you to stay 6 feet apart. Don't, the lodge, if you're going to hold a meeting, it needs to still be social distance. So I think we could do that, hopefully. And again, it's just a suggestion. Another thing on there, I would like to see us take down the thing on the guest check-in where it says, is this an essential visitor? What is the visitor? People are annoyed by that. I guess maybe, do we need a motion for that? I guess we should. I'll make that motion too. While we're on the topic, that we take that down on our guest check-in thing. So do we have a second there, or is that a comment, Kathy? Okay, are you seconding it? Steve is seconding that. Okay, so let's have comments on that one thing on the guest check-in on the visitor thing.
I don't have a comment on that. My comments on the motion. If we get a case in Kiowa, what are we going to do? It's eventually going to happen, whether it's in the fall, whether it's later in the year, it's bound to happen. So, and I think a lot of the groups, Vista, VOAD, they're all trying to make a plan for the fall because we keep being warned that there's more and more coming. Whether it'll be a slow roll, I mean, nobody knows. The models are all different. But what would be our stance once we had a case in Kiowa?
My opinion is that the state has lots and lots of cases, and they too are trying to open things up. So, if we had 1 or 2 from, most likely it's going to be going down, to the Metroplex or flying somewhere, something like that.
Yeah.
I would hope those people would be smart enough to stay at home, but Unless we had some major numbers, I don't know if right now we can say what we would do.
Okay.
I don't know. So other thoughts on Kathy's question or on my motion to change the guest check-in thing? Well, let's at least vote on the guest check-in things, so see what the consensus is on that. So all in favor of my motion to move that? Steve did. So anybody opposed to that one? Okay, so that motion passes unopposed. So thank you. So Charlie, can you relay that to whoever does that on the website? Okay, thank you. Anything else COVID related? Okay, I guess tomorrow morning, maybe we should work on some short message, not a 4-page document. We can keep it to 1 page. That would be great, saying, here's what we did. Please continue to be smart. Please continue to do this, whatever. And let's not make it sound like a mandate, okay? So I think people are tired of that. And like Jim says, they're ready to make their own choices. And I think we've done a good job of that. So, okay, on to committee updates. Discuss and take possible action on member charter changes for all committees and formation of any new committees. I don't know of any new committees. I had a couple of, I have to push that button now. Okay, architectural control. So Jim has agreed to become the chair of that. That was kind of our transition plan. So Jim Adams will become the chair of that after this meeting or after this vote. And I will roll off of that committee completely. So that's one change I'm aware of. Let's see. Nominating committee, Jim Mead is stepping down off of that committee. I don't think Pete's adding anybody else. And Jim Fox has proposed to add Steve Bialis to the Parks and Recreation Committee. Those are the only ones I am aware of. Sam, you have one?
Yeah, I'd like to add Scott Manning to the Safety and Security Committee.
Okay. Scott Manning. Okay, thank you. Anything else? Okay, so we need a motion to make these changes. Kathy moves. Do we have a second? Okay, Randy, second. Any other further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right.
Rick, one more question about committees. I was reviewing the Parks and Recreation Charter, and maybe Clark knows more than I since he dealt with it, but it's still lakes and parks.
I want to change that.
Well, maybe I pulled an old one. Has it?
Well,
So
when you change it, you got to submit it to, I believe.
Well, I'll work with Clark then,
Yeah,
but
work on that language.
I guess there is a charter now for the Lake Management Committee. The Jim
Mead or Marthas.
Marthas is doing. So, I mean, I don't want to, I might want to make certain that they've got everything covered they need to, and that because there's a lot of stuff in there about lakes. And if we're not going to be dealing with that, it just needs to get cleaned up and compatible
We
with
put
each
that
other.
change in, I'm not sure it may have gotten added to the website. That change was a long time ago. So.
Okay. Who would have that charter then?
I probably got it.
You got it? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, if y'all work together to get that put to bed. So, Sam.
Yeah, just for the record, Scott Manning's going to be an ex officio member of the Safety and Security Committee.
Okay, good. All right, okay, so all in favor of these changes, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, so those all pass. Thank you. Let's see. So that takes us to, am I still unmuted? Yeah. So Architectural Control Committee discuss and take possible action on conducting a member vote to change zoning of lots 1879 and 1880. So we have had Architectural Control took a look at that. Weren't real excited about it, but I don't know, you know, they just pointed out issues, including how difficult I think it will be to get enough votes to pass. So, so that was our probably biggest concern. We asked if safety and security would consider, you know, what their thoughts would be with regarding ingress and egress right there in our main access lane. If it became a busy business, you know, if it's a small business, may not be a big issue. But Sam, did y'all you want to cover your?
Yeah, I think from the Safety and Security Committee standpoint, the biggest issue is the traffic situation that it would create there at the gate if the internal business came in to the facility. And we just felt that it would not be a safe thing to do. That was our big thing. Traffic.
Okay, and then Land Use Committee, Jim Adams is on that. I guess is Lori the chair of that one? Is that right? So what's the general thoughts of the Land Use Committee there?
In general, they said it would be difficult to get it passed, but and just thought, and as a group, probably thought this wasn't you know, favorite idea, I guess, as a group for maybe some of the same reasons that simplicity and they just wanted to make sure that you know, the cost would be of election and that kind of thing would be borne by whoever's asking for it, and that they recommended that the parties that are asking for it should put on some kind of presentation to really explain what's going to be there, because they don't, unless everybody in the community really understands and sees something that they really can embrace, they just think it'd be hard to pass.
I guess one other consideration that I know ACC had was, can we put some type of restrictions on it so that we don't get a business that we really don't want, whatever it may be. So I want to ask Les that, Les, if we were going to rezone that lot, would we be able to put restrictions on it by allowing a vote on it?
Yes, we can put deep restrictions in that. Yeah, but I think we could put that in the wording of the rezone. This is rezone commercial with the following restrictions.
Okay, thank you.
I have to check on that for you.
All right. Yes, so Les believes in our, probably our vote, our motion here to rezone that property. If we wanted to vote in favor of it, we could add restrictions against certain type of businesses. So I think that'd probably be something we want to do. Les thinks we can. Not 100% sure yet, but he's going to check on that before it, you know, goes on, you know, to an actual vote, I suppose. So, Kathy?
Oh, what if it's sold the second time? You would have no say so. What if it's sold multiple times? How could we control it once we do the zoning to business?
Like I said, I might have to do some research
Okay.
on this, but I understand that we could zone that property. Commercial, then put restrictions on what type of business can be in. I know cities can do that, but we can do that. I don't think there's anything for us to do.
Okay.
All right, so as I understand,
And we can, like we do now, we can restrict things to residential and we can restrict things. I think we can restrict that only.
so as I understand Les's answer, then he thinks any restrictions we place on it now would apply to any future transaction, if it's sold. So Jim Fox.
I know in the city where I worked, zoning, there's a broad category and defined on what kinds of businesses can go into all those different zoning categories. And some, they would definitely restrict what you could or couldn't do, whether it was light industrial or whether it was retail or those types of things. But the actual specific businesses that would go into that zoning could not be legally restricted. So you couldn't say this business or that business, if they fit the category and how it was defined in the zoning ordinance, then that was the limits of what you could restrict. Does that make sense? You're not restricting a specific business.
But a category.
So it has to fit certain categorical things. And I don't know what we have here that would define what our commercial zoning is. So, and maybe that's something we could do.
Yeah. So I think it's going to take a little more study to figure out those definitions and which ones we want to include and which ones we don't, if we do that. Other comments on this? Okay. Charlie has made a point that and the ACC discusses too, if something doesn't happen to it, it's going to continue to deteriorate unless somebody buys it for what it is right now and fixes it up. So it's becoming a little bit of an eyesore. From that standpoint, it would be good to have something done to it. So,
But they're gonna be in charge of the work of going out and getting the people and getting the votes and all that stuff. We're not going to be having to do anything. So I don't know why we're having to worry about it. Just say if you can go out and get 750 votes, more power to you. That's going to be a chore.
Yep.
That's just my opinion.
Yep. So do we have? Clark.
Were we not at some point going to have an additional election to ratify FERF? To bring it up under the bylaws?
We probably need to. Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. So you're saying might be smart to combine those elections or something?
Yeah.
So, yep. Yeah, that's a good idea. So, I mean, certainly the chances of them even getting near enough votes increase with the more relevant issues on the ballot. So they might even want to wait until the next board election thing. I don't know if, from our standpoint, we want to clutter up that election with something like this, but it's something that would certainly help in getting a number of votes, I would think. So, other thoughts? So, well, I think I'll go on and make the motion that we go on and allow the owner and the realtor to begin, putting together a plan for an election, and that we, in the meantime, we need to work with Les to figure out specifically what types of businesses, categories of businesses could and could not be allowed there. So that's going to take a little work. So I don't know the exact motion that would be. I think right now my motion would be to let Les and Charlie and I and anybody else that wanted to participate in that to come up with a plan on what would be allowed and what would not be allowed. Charlie?
Can you hear me? Before you make the motion, do you think you want to give the owner of the property a chance to respond to anything that was been brought up so far?
Yeah, we could do that.
Because
Let's
that may
see.
affect your motion.
Yeah.
So, and I think Gayla's on the phone. Gayla Wilkerson is on the conference call, and her agent is Carol Blair. So hopefully they've been able to hear this. So if one of you could unmute and then comment on anything that has been said thus far.
Well, I know Gayla's on here. I'm really proud that she got on here too, but we're just wanting the opportunity. You know, we don't, and in regards to deed restricting, I mean, we're deed restricted from the property across the street where 902 is. They put in the deed restrictions that a real estate agency couldn't come in there and lease any property. So, I mean, I think that the lease and we can deed restrict however you want, you know, you want to do that. I mean, we're just wanting, you know, not bad things there in the property. But I will tell you, I can't say who, but I do have somebody that's really interested in the property if we can get it zoned commercial, and you would be very happy that that was going to happen there, because it would turn around that property and be a great looking piece of property when they came into Kiowa. So if you just let us, you know, move forward here. And when would I hate waiting until the next board election, because that just puts her so far out. But when is the other voting thing you were talking about? When is that?
We have not picked a time for that yet.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay. But I think that's a good idea. I mean, if we could go in with something else that we didn't have to wait till the next big one, that would be great.
okay, so your preference is to sooner rather than later. Okay.
It is for
Good.
her.
And
Yeah. for
willing
her.
to work with us on the deed restrictions.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
any other questions for the realtor or the owner? Okay, thank you all for
Okay. Thank
for
you.
participating there. So anyhow, I'm just making a motion that we go on and consider that and kind of form a team to come up with exactly what our restrictions would be, and then get with the realtor, the owner and the realtor to move forward with a vote. So do we have a second on that? Okay. It's like Kathy seconded it, I think. Yes, Jim.
Are we saying that this committee that goes off and figures out the plan?
Well, we probably would need to at least notify the board of what direction we're going. But in general, I'm saying right now, we want to move forward with allowing them to have the election. We just don't know the specific language yet of the restrictions we want to add. That's okay. Sam?
Yeah, I think that whatever you decide to do and whatever the people decide to do, is to consider the egress of the business as far as how it will be able to get back out onto 902. It will either have to come in through the Lake Iowa gate, or it will have to go through the parking lot there at the gate. And, you know, we're talking about the building of the rebuilding or whatever we're going to do with the yard house. All of these things really need to be considered kind of long term.
Right. So yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, there is no way to get out straight onto 902 if you're going out. You can come in from 902 fairly easily. It's the getting out is the bigger issue. And how, you know, they don't have to go through the gate, but they do have to go through the little parking lot in front of the guardhouse. And I guess as a resident, they would have to do that. A couple of, let me see, are there any residences right now on the other side that to get to their house, they have to do that, or does,
No, the other side, they go complete, they can go straight out to 902,
but to get into their house, some of them have to go through the parking lot,
probably do.
2 or 3 of them, yep. So yeah, it's always been a strange situation, or if people are backing out of them, while you're trying to get out is, you know, you have to keep your eyes open, but
Yeah,
yeah.
I'm just thinking about the, whatever business would go in, as to what type of business and how much traffic it actually generates.
Yep, understand. So, okay, any other comments before we vote? Okay,
So it is coming back to this.
we would come back with the recommended language. Right now, we're voting, we would basically be voting to proceed with the election. Okay. The specific restrictions we would need, we would need to make a recommendation and then seek the input of the board members before finalizing that.
But I think the details around when that election is, what's included with it, the work that's going to go on the matter to this group, at least for this person. So
Okay, so you'd rather just allow us to proceed and then before we final come back for a vote. Is that what you're saying? Okay, I'm good with that. So, okay, all in favor of that, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, so that motion passes. So we'll at least move forward, get our plan together on what we can and cannot restrict, and what the language would be and the date for such election. So, okay, thank you. Okay, next thing is discuss and take possible action on changes to the architectural control handbook. So I'd throw that off on Jim right now since he's now the chairman of it. But I guess I'll go on and proceed with that. So that is starts on page 47. So you remember we proposed some actual rule changes to the ACC handbook that were voted on, I think maybe in March. And so some of those resulted in the need for administrative changes to the handbook. So all of these right now are basically administrative changes associated with the previous vote we made to change the rules. So, you know, one of the changes we made was basically we don't want swimming pools in the front yard that extend beyond the front of a house. So if you can picture an L-shaped house where part of the L is facing the street, you could have in that courtyard a swimming pool, but no further. So that was one of them we made. On page 57, there's item 6 there says detached buildings may have a wash sink, washer and dryer, but no toilet, shower, or bathtub. That was actually in there for a long time and somehow it just got accidentally dropped. So that is not really a rule change itself. The other big thing we had was regarding common access lots, the procedures for requesting changes to your boat dock, seawalls, and things like that associated with common access lots. So we did approve the procedures there. So most of this is all just, again, administrative changes associated with those changes we already voted on. Any other questions as you look through these on the changes? Okay, so I make a motion to approve these administrative changes to the architectural control handbook. We have a second. Okay, Kathy seconds. Any questions or comments on that? All in favor of these changes, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, that takes us to facilities. Clark, can you give us an update on the pavilion?
Yeah, as everybody can see, the interior of the pavilion, the tongue and grooved siding is going on inside there. Really looks nice. Lots of wood, lots of staining. Probably need to address that in FERF right after we get that done and measure that cost. Staining has to reoccur about every 4 to 5 years after the first restaining. First restaining is probably about 3, then 4 to 5 thereafter. We'll measure that cost. We have a solution with regard to the septic system. It has been engineered. We have not approved that as a committee or as the pavilion folks. The pavilion construction committee has not agreed to that yet, but there is an approved. It's going before. We're going to take some options up to Cook County TECQ, TEQC, whatever it is, and get their blessing before we bring it around. But it's within the cost that in the budget. Everything so far is in budget. Everything's good. Timing is kind of iffy. As you know, we just got another 5 inches of rain. So it just keeps on pouring on us. So we're going to measure that. We don't have roof material yet. The roof, the underlay is up there. The paper underlay, the tar paper underlay is up there, but we don't have that metal roof yet. And so we're hoping to get that shortly, but we'll see. That needs to get up. Other than that, everybody can see what's going on. We got that sidewalk poured that wise off to the parking lot and to the patio. That will get an overlay on top of it as well. So don't think that that's what it's going to look like, because there'll be an overlay on top of that. So that's about all I've got right now. Any questions about that? Anybody have any questions about the pavilion? It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Clark.
we want
So
to
that next
Possible action
item
on
is,
furniture. You want to do that?
yes, discuss and take possible action on furniture, fixture. Charlie, are you going to lead that discussion, or is that Clark?
I don't have that with me. That bid.
Yeah, I'll lead that one. And this has been it's been mentioned to the board several times, and it was actually in your packet last week. So the additional folding furniture for the 6-foot or 71-inch tables, the folding chairs, and the dollies is about $7,000. Okay, so that's one. The PA system, and it is just a PA system. It's not meant for bands to hook up for, but people will be able to play background music, and events will be able to have a public address system that they can log into for any event that's out there, an auction or whatever can have that. That bid came in at about $14,000 and change. So I'm asking for approval on up to $12,000 on that. The reason I'm asking for $12,000 is because we've actually gotten a donation pledge for $3,000 for that system. So that's the good news is that was a donation that y'all accepted several months ago. So really $7,000 for the furniture and $12,000 for the PA system, and we should be ready to go.
And the source of funds, Charlie?
Those would be CARF. Thank you.
Clark?
Yeah, just so everybody's aware, we looked at this before, about 3 months ago. And one of the issues on the PA system was to make sure Randy got a look at it and that he didn't have a better solution. And Randy has blessed this solution.
you say carp, but that hadn't been on a list, right? And then I thought we had money set aside from a carryover from a prior year or something. We did part of the furniture a couple of months ago, and then there was a carryover. And I thought this funding was going to come from a fund balance carryover.
The furniture we did last month, and that actually came out of CARF, and we had put together a forecast for the CARF. And actually, when we met a couple weeks or so ago, we talked about, we'd plugged in this number and actually had it 15,000 at that time. So yeah,
you're probably right.
Yeah. CARF will be down to it'll be a pretty skinny fund at the end of the year, but then of course it'll start replenishing there.
Okay, so I guess we need a motion and a second on that. Somebody want to make a motion? Clark moves. Okay, Jerry second. So any further questions, comments on that? Okay, all in favor of moving forward on those purchases, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, so that motion passes. So let's do the golf committee, and then we're gonna take a short break. Randy, can you update us on tournaments?
All right, we had with March and April being kind of out of kilter, we had a couple of changes. Nothing major in as far as adding dates. What the Capers and the match play flipped dates. They were both 3-day tournaments, and they flipped dates up because Capers is more social, and the Pavilion, and hopefully this stuff is all out of the way, and it was moved to October 16th and 18th. So the June date of 12th through the 14th will be the men's match play, and it's all tee times, and you're playing against somebody, so there's not a lot of social. It's more of an individual type thing. And then the ladies switched from their member guest to their President's Cup. They changed, so they kind of eliminated a tournament, and everybody was happy with that. So those are the major ones. And then we had one other one that got admitted was ICF, the Flower Department tournament. And we scheduled it for September on a Monday. So we wanted to be sure and give them their opportunity to have their charity. And the ladies canceled their charity event because they didn't want people out here, and afraid businesses were already scrapped and didn't want to go ask for donations. So basically, we added no new tournaments, just flipped them besides the fire department tournament. So that was the thing. We had voted on it before, and so now we've got an amendment to the deal, and I've got copies if you want to change for your deal, but that's what we did in the golf committee. 14th.
Any questions for Randy on that? Did you think you're saying we need to vote on that?
No, I don't. I mean,
okay, it's just an update.
Just
You
an
just gave us
update because we'd already voted on the dates. We just changed the names.
Okay.
So
Right.
besides the 14th.
Okay, thank you. So how about we take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll return for the budget thing. So let's be back at 7:20. Thank you.
The AC kicks on, it's a little noisy down there. I noticed it. That's better than cooking. I don't know, if it kills that virus, maybe we want to get a candy better too. Jim, I don't like either of your retailer choices.
I was going to say they can restrict, they Plano restricted stuff all the time. I mean, you couldn't do certain kind of bars, you couldn't do certain kind of restaurants.
There would be people that come to council because a particular business was moving in. They say, I don't want foam daddy in there
Right.
because their waitresses are too scantily.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, we can't restrict foam daddies from coming in there if it fits
Right.
the restaurant retail.
But they define the restaurant retail business.
But it was, as long as it met the restaurant definition for zoning,
Right.
foam daddies could go in.
Right.
And the city could not stop that. They couldn't make their own decision on what business was going to be. So that's all I was trying to say was we could say we don't want certain businesses, I would do that definition of that zoning, but then you can't go back and say, well, specifically we don't want this. Yeah, I think like another good example was in retail, somebody came in and wanted to put a condom shop in a retail strip center. And there was people showed up all over the council saying, we can't do that. And he's like, I'm sorry, that's something you can do with retail. Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't know where that's coming from because I'm
Maybe. I don't know.
Okay, I think we are all back, right? So let's call the meeting back into order here. And let's move on to the budget. So as my understanding of where we are is a no increase to the O&M budget or the maintenance fee portion of the O&M budget. We want to keep I believe Ways and Means is now good with keeping ARF where it is. I believe that Clark and Charlie have been through the FERF budget, which is, I guess, part of CARF. And they're okay with where that is. So, of course, we have the 1250 Lake Management Reserve Fund. We've got garbage collection, which, Charlie, is that a firm? Do we know exactly what they've gone up on garbage collection?
No, we don't know exactly what they've gone up until they notify us in June and it goes into effect in July.
And is that an automatic pass through then when they change that, or do we just have to go on and vote now and as best we can?
The best thing to do is vote now. I mean, I'm looking at what we're tracking so far this year, and we're actually fairly close on that.
So, okay, and Jim, you have comments?
You stated that right now it says ARF is holding the same, but what Charlie provided the other day, or the Ways and Means Committee put out the other day, was actually a slight increase in ARF to carry for the future. No, ARF. It's 39.25 in the past, and now it's 15.
That's what I put in the document that part of the spreadsheet that I sent.
Well, the one Charlie just handed out says 39.25. Clark.
Yeah, I got a second email after that one that said they're good with it staying the same. I know what he's talking about. I got that email too. But there was a follow-up email after that that said they were good to leaving it at the 39.25 for no increase.
Well, so I think the email you're referring to was the one I forwarded last Thursday or Friday from Brent Reed when we said that they met. We had met with Brent and Bill Turner on Wednesday, and they said in light of an O&M flat expense that they recommended that we go with a no increase in ARF. Okay, and that was emailed in that I distributed out on Thursday, I think it was, okay, or Friday. Now it's up to the board to decide. It's your decision on that. That's their recommendation. They did request, there were several items in the ARF that I suggested that we take out. One of them was the money set aside. It was $170,000 to rebuild the wall around the number 9 green area. I said, that's like a stone wall. It's not going to go anywhere. So we took that out. We did also true up the septic systems because they were in the subset of CARF, which is FERF. And so they reside there. We took those out of ARF. Their big ask is to come up with a plan, a fairly specific plan for the golf course. And I have spoken with Brian Brown on that, and he's going to work on it. Now, remember, that's 12 years from now. So, projecting a plan 12 years from now is good. So Brian is going to come back and see, because their comments were, how would you do this? Do you shut down all 18 holes at once? Do you do 9 holes one year, then 9 holes the next year? But because the other thing is you typically want to shut the course down in prime growing time so the grass can grow in as fast as possible. They sprig it versus sod it. So you want to do it, and that's about this time of year. So it's a double-edged sword. So those are decisions, or those are some issues that Brian is going to explore and come back and then make a recommendation. So, but I think, and Brent's other comments was to take the inflation factor in the ARF down to 0 for the next couple of years, and also take out the contingency and see how that, impacts the numbers to try to hold off on it. But it is up to this group to decide what you want to do with that.
Okay, Clark.
Yeah, and I believe what he's talking about is the greens. If you look at fairways and tee boxes on the ARF schedule, which I don't understand how that's working currently. There's a certain, in both of those categories, there's a certain amount allocated every year. Doesn't make any sense. So I think that needs to be looked at with respect to ARF. My initial response, and being on the Ways and Means Committee, my initial response to the greens deal is, if you spread them out over a couple of years or more years than that, you're going to have inconsistencies. That's the reason there's golf courses, when they want to redo their greens, like shut them completely down, redo everything and go back. Otherwise, you're going to have inconsistencies. The ARF schedule needs some work. I think we need to look at some of that, and I think leaving it at 39.25 because of taking out the wall around number 9, and there was a couple of tractors, implements that they no longer use that we took out, and those changes I think make up for that.
On the spreadsheet that you sent earlier in the week, or later in the week? Because
They're not out yet. They're suggesting to take.
okay, so if they're not out, or if they're going to be taken out, it's hard to tell. But your if you leave it at 39.20 or 39.25, then you're projecting about a $320,000 deficit in the balance of the fund in year 2032. We can make up for it by just having the next board raise it more, but we're going to be forced to raise it at a higher percentage in the future in order to catch back up and be able to keep a cash balance there.
That depends upon several things. Number one, whether or not that's sufficient funds, or maybe more than needed at that time. Further, your annual expense has got money coming out of tee boxes and fairways. That's the reason I brought that up. And we're not doing anything to them. I'm not quite sure how that works or what's going on there. It's something we need to look at.
But it's a account.
Put aside for those deductions and dreams, so that when you do get that, you have money to pay for it.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, I said, but that while that money goes in every year, it's a savings account. The amount that goes in every year to pay for those fairways and greens. And if you don't have it when you get there,
Now, those are expenses. It's showing on the fairways and greens, it shows money coming out.
right?
Every
That's
year.
how we determine what our cash flow or our expenses drive what our revenue needs to be. And if you're going to end up with a negative balance in year 2032, you won't be able to pay for those greens. And you're right. There's a lot of factors in here.
There's huge.
There's an assumption on inflation. There's
Yeah, and that was another thing I wanted to talk about. They think that this year is going to be, the CPI is going to be 0. And that may be true, but I'm not so sure that it's going to be that next year and the year after. And so I think those are annual decisions that we need to make. But we're not spending those monies on tees and fairways. That $5,000 a year we're not spending it. That's the point I'm making. It doesn't even have it then coming out, all out. The schedule's a mess, is what I'm telling you, with regard to those issues.
Yep, okay, I appreciate that. So those are the items we need to continue to focus on in coming year. So, so as far as, Charlie, do you have something?
As well with the greens, I think the fairways and tee box need the same analysis.
Right. Agree. Okay. Charlie, do you have something?
We kind of went from O&M to the reserve funds. Could we go back and revisit O&M and see if anybody has any questions on that and at least get that one nailed down?
Okay.
So,
All right. Everybody okay with 192.12 maintaining the O&M portion of the maintenance fee portion of our dues at 192.12?
and remember to achieve that, because this is an unbalanced budget, our expenses are forecasted to be higher than that revenue. But the proposal was to utilize the current surplus from last fiscal year to cover that. So hopefully everybody understands that, and we should be fine. Once again, forecasting 18 months in the future with the uncertainty we've been through the last 2 months, but I think we have the ability, we should be good. We may have to make some minor adjustments as we go forward. So.
Yeah, I really appreciate your work on this and the belt tightening and everything that had to go into that. And normally, you know, I guess I wouldn't have insisted on or I wouldn't have expressed a preference on no increase, but with the economic hit that a lot of people are taking right now, plus the fact that we are doing the 1250 on the Lake Reserve Fund this year is kind of, to me, the overwhelming thing. So again, I appreciate your work to do that, Charlie. So that takes us to CARF 2438, including the first portions of it, I guess. Jim, would you care to talk about any of the projects, your plans there, and kind of what that balance would be at the end of the 18 months, based on what you're looking at right now?
Okay, the CARF account is made up right now of different savings for what we call projects, CARF projects, that I'll talk about in just a second. It also includes the dam work, or dam engineering work, I should say, and some silt prevention maintenance work, or on ongoing basis for silt prevention. And then technically it has FERF in it also, but in a spreadsheet that I shared with you guys, I split that out. So I just want to talk about the CARF and the dam and silt. The dam is pretty much the dam engineering is something we've already committed to from prior board, and then this board is so far committed to that project to be finished. And silt prevention comes from the Lake Management Committee, and we can go through that as much as anybody wants to. So those three things add up to $18.85 based on the projects that came out of long range planning and that we projected for this next fiscal period of 18 months. And those would include the dam spillway, the guardhouse, a gate access system, and I have on there cart bridges, and that's already in progress, and there's money set aside for that to finish those, and then east gate access, and then some amount of money for parks to be determined, because that was a suggestion from long range planning to keep improving the beach area and park areas, and that those committees can make further recommendations. So when I put all those together in the spreadsheet, it came out to a new CARF minus FERF of 1885. And then the FERF, Clark, they could talk to that more, but Clark forwarded me the FERF schedule and had a $3.50 amount, right? Right. And that's what it's currently at. So those two together total 2236. I will point out that maintaining the CARF fee, which there's a on a spreadsheet I sent last week. The CARF itself is like 1450 of that. When I'll say these projects like the guardhouse and the East Gate, cart bridges, those kinds of things, that's really 1450. And if you can follow all the projects that long range planning has to date, and we really don't hit a negative out until we start to really impact the cash balance in that account when and if we do something with the exterior of the lodge, which is on the list in future years. And we don't even really know what that expense would be. And they're pretty big right now. I've talked to some more expertise than me, and they said, oh, I'd probably be done a lot less than what I had on there. So I think, but just the point to say that, the funding at that 1425 will be fine out until we get to that lodge exterior project in the future. And it may be fine then too.
Okay, so your recommendation then is to keep it at the 2438?
I'm saying it's 2235.
So to lower it to 2235, and that doesn't, how much were you including for the lake maintenance people for the silt removal and stuff like that? Is there
break it down?
Is there some monthly amount set out for that?
FERF is 350. FERF is dam spillway is 210. Came down because we only have to collect a portion of it now, and we were trying to collect for the whole thing in the last fiscal year. So that's now 210. And then there's an erosion from the lake management.
225. That used to be 313.
Right.
And basically, CARF is remaining the same at 1450, or for CARF projects.
Guardhouse, things like that. Okay, good. And so that's what adds up to, what'd you get?
2235.
So that'd be your bare bones. And then, like you say, when in the future, if we do some bigger projects, we may have to have higher percentage increases. So I guess it comes down to, do we want to go in and lower it now, knowing we might have to raise it more in the future, or do we want to keep it where it is? So what's the feeling of everybody else?
And I personally would rather just stay status quo where it's at instead of trying to raise later. And, if we have extra money, that's a project that can get done quicker, something, if it works out that well. If we don't, then there's a cushion to get the projects we want done. But I hate going in asking people for money when they're already used to doing it.
Okay, anybody else got an opinion on that? Leave it where it is, or bring it down? Jim Fox?
I would tend to leave it at the 2438 also. I do think that that would allow us to do some projects and things too, that it would affect the cash, his schedule here. And I think there's some things that I'm seeing initially, and even in Parks and Recreation, that could get done, but at that rate, we may not be able to get to it. So I do think there are some things that we could move ahead with that are smaller projects that are not going to overburden staff and stuff like that. So.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Anybody else got an opinion one way or the other? Clark? Okay, fine, leaving it where it is, or, okay. Jerry, you got an opinion one way or the other? Okay, Sam?
Yeah, I would say leave it, my point all along been to keep it, everything just like it is. All we'd be doing is adding the 1250.
Okay, all right. So Jim, do you have another comment? Jim Adams?
My understanding is that in part, we should maintain a schedule of the projects that we think we're gonna do and keep them prioritized. And that there's a specific schedule of what we're gonna do. So to Jim's point, if there are ideas that we need to do, we wanna allocate more money, we really should be naming those projects so membership knows what those are.
Well, you know, my experience on the board now the last couple of years, that there's always something new and different, and that every cost estimate we ever get is wrong, you know, and most of the time they've been low. So again, that's, you know, there's no way I think that we could do what you're saying, specifically name projects and cost. So I think we do need some cushion there. Jim Fox.
Jim, also to your point, I believe there are some projects that are already on the list that are specifically named that have to be determined costs. And as we determine those costs, I think that's what I'm speaking to, is hopefully we could accomplish some of those things that we have that are already on the list, but not funded yet.
Yeah, no, I appreciate, there's no way we can estimate these projects. I was just saying they should be on a list of approved projects that we are behind, and therefore the membership knows what those projects are.
I encourage that, and I encourage it to go through the long range planning deal. But the reality of it is, in my 2 years on this board and the previous 3 years on a board, it's really hard to predict what may come up. And so, I mean, a plan is a plan, but and a budget's a budget, but there are always going to be differences there. So I feel the consensus here, or the majority, want to leave it at 2438. And ARF we've talked about. I guess Jim made a point that at one time they thought there may be a shortfall. Clark's point is that there's a lot of things that need looking in there, as Charlie has said too. So I would propose that one stay at 3925 as well. What's other opinions on that? Kathy agrees. Anybody disagree with that?
It's hard to disagree with the point if we're saying we don't know what the spreadsheet has in it, or if it's not correct. It's hard to say, well, what is the right number? So shorter.
That I think have to say where we are, so we better understand.
Okay. Thank you. So I think that's everything, Charlie. Is that right? So can we now agree on what would be our total total maintenance,
Well, if the O and M's accepted, the CARF, then the total maintenance fee is the same, $216.50. ARF is at $39.25. The Lake Management Reserve Fund is at $12.50. The garbage collection, I'm putting in 24 cents, so that's $17. The only other things, and make sure, if you would, make sure you're looking at the fee schedule that's dated across the top 5/15/20, or at the bottom, it should be printed at 5/15/2020 at 3:17 p.m. This is a updated copy. And then the lot constitution subdivision fee would go up $750. And what that is that's 60 months of the 1250 Lake Management Reserve Fund. Okay, so it's 5 years out there. And then the deconstitution fee, the proposal, and we haven't talked about this much, I did mention a couple meetings ago, would be to just take that up to $400, because there is a good amount of work that we have to put into a deconstitution fee. I don't know how many that's going to represent in the future. It's probably a very small amount, but it is something.
right.
So.
I think that's a reasonable change. And we are seeing quite a few of those lately, right? Which is really a good thing, because we wind up getting more revenue. So, okay, so do we have a motion to accept the fees, all the proposed fees noted on Charlie's page, dated 5/15/20? Okay, Kathy so moves. Do we have a second? Steve moves. Okay. Final discussion, comments, thoughts from anybody? Before you vote?
Charlie, I have one.
Jerry?
I want to know what percent that might be of an increase over last year. If any.
The 12, including the 1250 increase?
Yeah.
As I recall, that was going to be right around 4%. Okay, Charlie, can you calculate that for him? Good. Jim Adams, you have another comment?
I'm good with the motion put forward, but I do want to point out that it says the board, this is for CARF, the board will annually identify assets to be purchased or projects to be financed in CARF fund, and will regularly report CARF balances and expenditures to the membership. So that to me implies we should have a plan for specific projects.
Yep, and it changes. So every time we make a change to it, we report that. Of course, the long range plan is part of that, but every time we make a change on CARF funds, it goes, we choose to do something else, it goes into the minutes and is reported to the members. And then the CARF balance comes out every month in the communique. So I think we meet those guidelines.
So to answer Jerry's question, I added O&M, CARF, and ARF together, and the Lake Management Reserve Fund. I did not include the garbage collection because to me that's kind of separate there. And it's a overall 4.7% increase, all of which is driven by the affirmative member vote for the creation of the Lake Management Reserve Fund.
Okay, 4.7%. Okay, so even under 5%, even including that. So I think that's good. Further discussion before we vote? Okay, all in favor of the motion to approve these fees, say aye. Anybody opposed? Okay, there's your budget, Charlie. Motion passes. Thank you. Let's see, community managers report. Charlie?
Yeah, and I've lost it. Okay, give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Everybody hear me? Okay. This first bullet point here was done is good news. Is I'm forecasting that we could finish the fiscal year closer to break even, possibly even with a minor surplus. This is a month later. You know, of course, we're looking at the lodge, even though the performance is not up to the budget level. There are some improvements. We're operating at about 55% of the budgeted revenue there. So some of this is also going to be determined by what we're actually physically able to get done. The before mentioned rainfall that we've had continues to push off the finalization of our road projects. They're actually looking for a dry spell of about 7 to 10 days, and that hasn't happened, and it's not forecasted to happen, but we're going to work hard to do that. And I think we should be work on very close to that. So as I get a further update, then I'll update you again, you know, next month. The Paycheck Protection Program is we've in place. It's been funded. This would be the second week that we've paid our lodge employees out of that, and Susan is tracking it to make sure that we adhere to the intent and the letter of the agreements there. So going well on that. I'll get down and talk about the lodge a little bit more specific. Drainage, we continue to get feedback on drainage with the torrential rainfall that we've had, a little over 4 inches this weekend. So we had gotten a couple calls on that. So we do have Rich and Chris. I've had them develop kind of a standard template, and they're loading things. They're loading all the information into the standard template, and then we will come back to the board with some some priorities on that, and may ask for a small subcommittee to be put together for a few board members to look at it that are interested in it. Communicate, ad sales continue to be strong, which is positive. Knock on wood, I'm pleasantly pleased with last month, and then also this month looks good. Jim Adams had mentioned earlier about the golf cart bridges. And so we finally got a break in the weather when we're able to do some things. The bridge over 1316 was covered with what's called an alligator patch, which is meant to go over roads that are alligatored. I can't speak. And what that means is there's road sections that'll break up into small pieces. This is a product that is a top coating, and it's a thick asphalt emulsion that has some particles in it, and it kind of binds everything together. So that's what you see on 13 and 16. They also did some crack sealing before and everything. So I think it is smoother. The key thing will be how it holds up and how it wears over time. What we did on number 4 and 9 on the FAR bridge, we actually had a product that was called Trowel Pave, that is kind of a high-tech asphalt that comes in dry. You add a catalyst to it. It's a 2-part process, kind of like what you do with an epoxy. You mix that out, and then you trowel that flat. Okay. Initially, it looked really good. It's actually come up a little bit, and we were questioning, did we get the application down exactly right? They did some additional fill in on the bridges over there on the edges that were real feathered in the whole bit. So the thought process is then, if we get the trowel pave out there and we get it fairly smooth, to go back and alligator patch the 2 bridges connecting the number 9 island to both sides of the lake there. But that will have to be shut down for 2 days because that product has to cure for that period of time, and we would able to do that. What the thought process is, do that in the late summer or the fall when they aerate the greens again and have it closed down for 2 days. We didn't want to, with the demand on the golf course, we didn't want to shut it down for an extra day right now. So, so far the test phase has been funded out of O&M, and Jim Adams earlier alluded, we need about 7,000 out of CARF to do the remainder of that, provided it holds up well. Lodge, the costs exceed revenues by about on an average of 744 a day. It's a slight improvement of where we're at before. The tables are at 50% and properly spaced, and demand is low, which is typically what is happening in the restaurant industry across the board, where they're adhering to the guidelines and the standards. I will go back again tomorrow and research. I don't think the governor has changed his recommendations that would apply to us. Most places have upgraded to 50%. We opened at 50%. Okay. I will tell you that there are independent restaurants and bars that are violating the orders, and that's their choice. And it just as it's your choice if you want to be a patron of that place. So I think once again is I do urge you to look at what the top tier name brand chains are doing out there, because they are typically taking the high road. If you look at the Chick-fil-A's of the world, the McDonald's of the world, because obviously they have a lot of risk. Okay, so they don't want to do something that puts their customers or their employees at risk because of the liability of it. Individual places here are fighting for their lives, so they'll tend to take some additional risk. But we will reevaluate that and look at tomorrow. I think with the change in allowing visitors in, as was voted in earlier, may help drive some of that as well. We did also get the patio set up the latter part of last week. So hopefully if the weather's good, that'll drive it. The forecast for this weekend is not too swift. There's a rain again in the forecast. So we'll see how that goes. The roads, public works staff, they've kind of taken a hiatus from crack seal, and they'll kick back up on that. And once again, the ceiling, I keep hearing that we're continuing to be pushed off because all their other projects are delayed. One of the things that was brought up last meeting would be the guardhouse ideas. And so Sam is working, and there's going to be a safety and security meeting the end of this month. Is it this Wednesday? Oh, okay. Next Wednesday. Okay. That'll cover that item. So overall, electronic forms are working quite well. We will noted about changing the visitors form as it was voted on earlier, and we'll get that done. I've already notified Scott of that. But the majority of the forms when it comes to boat, auto registration, and the visitors pass is working fairly smoothly. And actually Scott Manning has come up with a little advanced automation key, which is really interesting in terms of he's gotten so when people submit the form electronically, it auto populates a Google form sheet that the guards can actually look at, and they're not having to print out paper. So necessity is the mother of invention. So it might be a good find on this thing here. So we're working on that. So that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Any questions for Charlie? All right, thank you. So additional business. So two things come to mind. The budget process. So we will publish in the communique the proposed budget that we have. And then I believe we're supposed to have, is it called a town hall meeting, Charlie, that we're supposed to have? What are we supposed to have?
I believe it's referred to as open hearing. So it's along the lines of a town hall. So from this point, what you all just approved will be in the communique that will be going out. It'll be out before June the 1st. We will then print copies of this packet, basically what you got, and there'll be reference copies in the lodge office and then reference copies in the POA office. So if people want to come by and look at that, they have the ability to drill down in the detail, but that's not, not to leave. That's typically stays there. Practically speaking, what people do if they want it, they take a picture with their phone and take that home, and that's okay. We just don't want to print up 1,500 copies of it. So from that perspective, and then it'll be in the communique. There's a 10-day period for members to be able to review it. And then we talked about, and it'll depend on what guidelines or restrictions are in place. I think if we have a meeting in there, of course, the chairs will have to be 6 feet apart. If that's in in place at that point in time. We would also like to solicit budget questions in advance so we could have as many of the questions as possible. And I would assume that we would do the meeting also similar to how we're doing it here. So it would be able to be broadcast to people out there. But every member will have 10 days to see it ahead of time. And as a side note, Rick actually wrote a article that will be on the front page that basically explains the budget and everything that y'all just voted on. So there'll be lots of communication in the next communique about it.
Yeah, now what I'm suggesting is that we have the budget hearing and public budget hearing in the assembly room with appropriate spacing. Now, and I'm suggesting on June 10th at 6 p.m. Now I'm going to be gone that day. I'll watch by Zoom probably unless the baby is being delivered right then. But so Sam, I would ask if you could run the meeting. I would ask that Charlie do the majority of the speaking on O&M. With Jim Adams to lead discussion on CARF and with Clark to lead any discussions on ARF and FARF. I know FARF's kind of a subset of CARF, but you're more the projects ones. Clark's the FARF guy. So does that date work for y'all?
And what the proposal would be to take the PowerPoint that I've used for the budget presentation in previous meetings, update it with everything, and then Jim hacks his long-range plan and actually put the projects that he feels will go live over the 18 months in there and do it in a PowerPoint presentation versus saying on, January, the, securities vehicle expense is going to be, not drilling into detail, but going top level. And, it is good news considering you're able to hold the line on every category except the affirmative vote.
So I am thinking, again, we take questions ahead of time and try to answer those on budget only. We're not going to talk about the food at the lodge or the geese or whatever it is, just budget. And then if we need to, I can't really see much pushback on a zero increase budget. So that would give us time to make any necessary changes through, I guess that would be I guess our next board meeting is what, 5 days after that, Charlie? So at that meeting time, if we needed to. Yes, we meet, this one's on Wednesday and then our regular board meeting would be the following Monday. So assuming we have no big issues, then we just approve the budget as we're publishing today. We approve that at the June 15th meeting. So, okay, so that's kind of the plan there. Emergency COVID response meetings. So next Monday is Memorial Day. So I'm thinking, and we've kind of decided pretty much all the issues. So I would like to propose that we suspend further meetings, emergency meetings, unless we have an emergency that we need to respond to. So I would say we have no other scheduled COVID response meetings. Is that okay with everybody? Okay. Okay, so no, we don't have any others planned. Any other additional business before we answer the comments from the members? Okay, let me find, I've got those somewhere. Lost in my pile. Gosh, what did I? Okay, very good. And do you need this or do you want me to answer that one now? Okay. First question, now that the governor's, and this is from Warren Hill, lot 737. Now that the governor's shelter in place orders expired, why can't homeowners invite guests to play golf? Well, we just answered that question by opening up golf to guests. So second question, Jim Mullen, lot 764. In the proposed 2020 budget, how much money is allocated to operate and maintain the golf course, and how much is allocated to the lake? Please include both direct and indirect budget expenditures, a breakdown of the totals. So golf, the total $781,000. So it is no doubt one of our biggest ticket items that in the roads, right? Lake, 98,000. Lake Management Reserve Fund will be 218,000 budget. Next question was from Jackie Gary, lot 1211. Taking into consideration of COVID-19, what are the plans for the July the 4th? I coordinate the Fred Anderson Memorial Craft Show and I've canceled it. We are in the South Restroom and see no way to observe COVID-19 guidelines. Maintaining 6 feet would be next to impossible. Well, that is a good question. I don't know that we've made a decision on that yet. Maybe that's something we should have talked about. Charlie has an option for the fireworks if we're not able to use them on July the 4th, we could use them later on, perhaps if we have a grand opening of the pavilion or something like that. So Charlie, what's your best guess right now on, I know July the 4th, it will happen.
July the 4th.
Do we have a celebration?
We hope this isn't, July 4th will happen. What exactly will happen, I think we'll have to wait till we get closer. We've already paid the deposit for the fireworks, which we have to do to lock in. I think it's a fairly good likelihood that the fireworks will go off as planned. So that might be the high point of our summer. They believe that they've sourced all of the products because fireworks are produced in China. So luckily we got our deposit in early and we're a good enough customer with them that we should be good to go on that. The issue will be if they are able to get their people out here and they can work the conditions at which they'll need to work to assemble the fireworks, because usually it's fairly close quarters. So depending on what the recommendations are at that point in time, they'll have to determine that one. I have also reached out and heard back from the kiddie ride people, which we've already paid a deposit on that too, because you have to if you can reserve it. And so from that perspective, they are saying that they are doing certain types of rides these days, okay, which I'm kind of surprised about, but we'll see as we get closer. I would be surprised if the bounce house and the water slide would go off. I would think that that wouldn't be. I don't see how we could sanitize a climbing wall. I do think some of the other little kiddie rides, you could do serious wipe downs of all the touch points in between that. I do think that we'll probably have to look at the direction of Austin or Washington in terms of what's going on with playgrounds, because to me, it's kind of like a moving playground. So we don't know that. Quite frankly, I don't know how a cakewalk can happen. As disappointing as that will make everybody, because it's typically been supplied by members of the women's club baking goods in their house and then bringing them up here, and then groups of people getting into the assembly room. If, you know, I guess the big question will be is if the pavilion will be ready for us to be able to do food outdoors at July 4th. And if so, I think that'll have to be, you know, in compliance with whatever the guidelines are at that point in time. So it's really, it's in a buffet format, but the food is wrapped up inside of it. So we'll have to see exactly if there's any guidance on that. And then the, you know, the distancing. So some of that's up in the air. The craft show, I've actually left Jackie a message. We exchanged voicemails. I would think that would probably be a low a low prospect just due to the amount of people that they have to get in here and set up booths. So I would assume that would fall under the same guidelines that retail would, in the real world outside there. And so that's really up to them if they want to put the effort together to do it, knowing that they'll be subject to whatever the ruling is at that point in time. So the date that is what Rick alluded to was we've tentatively reserved the Sunday of Labor Day to be a backup for the fireworks display if July 4th is scrubbed. Okay. So once again I think it's probably a better than 50% chance that we'll have fireworks on July 4th. So.
Okay, thank you, Charlie. Okay, next one is a Sam question. This is from Peggy Carpenter, lot 552. Why is the speed limit across the dam 20 miles per hour when my car idles faster than that? On a flat part, that's amazing, that car. But what was wrong with 30 miles per hour? I have to sit on my brakes to stay at 20 miles per hour. Some changes in the speed limit are good, but some appear to be just to show control rather than safety. So, Sam, can you answer that?
Yeah, I'll try. The Safety and Security Committee looked at not just across the dam, but the whole Lake Kiowa Drive, all the way around the lake. And we met for a number of months to come up with the speed limit plan that we presented at a town hall. And we also presented to the board. And believe it or not, across the dam, prior to what we did, based on the Texas traffic law, it was 15 miles an hour across the dam. So we actually raised it to 20. And we felt that from a safety concern, it was necessary to keep it not real fast, but to keep it at a reasonable speed, which we thought was 20. Mainly due to the fact that it is narrow. We have dualies pulling trailers with lawnmowers and tractors. And there's not too much room to go when you have railing on either side. So from a safety standpoint, we felt the 20. And as I said, we presented it to the board, had the meetings, and was approved. And we still feel that that's the safest speed to have there. However, it's up to the board if it's a decision made that needs to be looked at.
Okay, Sam, thank you. I think that's certainly good justification. Last one was Shelby Bell, lot 331. How much longer will we have to justify people coming to our own homes? I think that's probably a reference to the guest check-in website because we really didn't prohibit guests to their houses. We just asked on the website, is this a critical thing or not? So, and we've addressed that today on the website, where we're no longer going to ask, is this a critical reason and to justify. You just go to but you will still have to use the website to check to get guest passes. So that's all the questions I know of. So Charlie, looks like you have a slide up here on the graduation parade. I guess maybe we needed that in other business.
Yes, I'm sorry. I just realized this. This is something that was brought up. Was it a board meeting a month ago? I think, yes. And it was brought up. So the couple people have gotten together. There's really no incredibly easy answer with this, because when you start thinking about the logistics of it, it's difficult to do. But this is what Leanne's put together. This here on the screen is just showing the recommended route for the cars to queue up to go by. So we'll go through. It's conceived as a method for honoring those individuals not having a proper ending celebration. There's one thing that we looked at is in terms of, hang on here a second. We had talked about having a group members collect outside the lodge and then having the graduates drive by. That was one thing. There's pros and cons to it. There's another version where graduates and family are assigned a space in front of the lodge. So they'd be lined up out front. We can mark it off with blue masking tape and then have people drive by there and honk their horn and cheer and do all that good stuff. Okay. So that's really what Leanne settled on and recommended. So this is the option right here that we would need some people to help with setup. And then the setup would start at 9:30. The graduates and family would be encouraged to bring chairs and decorations. They wear their cap and gown, and it'd be from like 10 to 11. They would be out there, and whoever drove by and honking and waving and all that, it is what it is from that perspective. So once again, we're not going to police it, but well over half of the graduates are from outside of Lake Kiowa. They're either kids that have graduating from college or their grandkids graduating from high school or grandkids graduating from college. So it'll be up to the individual members to decide if they want to mingle all those people together. But we're actually providing safety to our members because our members can be in the car. They'll be in their own car and they can drive by and honk. And if they want to leave their window up or down or, whatever, it'll be up to them. So that's the best solution that we could come up with. It's going to happen 2 weeks from this coming Saturday. So we need to get the word out on it pretty darn quickly. So anybody have any comments, feedback? Love to, Jerry, you want to weigh in? Clark, you've been somewhat involved. It's a lot of moving parts, right? So.
Charlie, I know if we needed some volunteers to help manage anything, the CERT people would be more than happy to step up. Just let me know how many and from what time, and I'll start looking for volunteers.
That'd be great. So I'll pass that on to Liam.
Is that June 6th,
June the 6th.
Saturday morning? How many do you have? 24.
Yeah, it's 24 potential.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Well, that's good. So that sounds like a plan then. Thank you, Charlie. And Leanne, I guess, worked on that too. So thank you, Leanne. Okay. So now we've got some things that we need to talk about in the executive session. So I guess we're going offline now. We don't have any further business other than the executive session. So we're going to cut the video feed off. Jim, did you have something before we do that?
As long as it's reflected in the minutes, then it should be sufficient. So no reason to have to announce it. So.
Okay, so let's go on and cut the video feed. Do we have a motion first to go into executive? Okay, Jerry moves, Clark second. So all in favor going into executive session? Okay, so it's done.